Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Perspective. I feel so honored. Over the past few weeks, I have had the pleasure of interviewing the Women of Purpose nominees on this show, and each and every one of them has come onto the show, touched my life in such a special way, and each and every one of those women have come in with their own expertise and something special that they bring to the world. And I have been blessed in having interacted with these women. And I'm pleased to say that another nominee is on my show this morning. She's a medical doctor. Her name is Dr. Ayesha Jacub, and she too is one of the nominees for Women of Purpose. And isn't it amazing that each and every woman, not only necessarily the nominees, but every woman you meet in life, whose path you cross, has got a story to share. And when you walk away from her, you kind of count your blessings, you're in gratitude for the abundance in your own life, and you then realize that you're not alone. You're not alone in the struggle against the forces, the evil forces out there, or the negative forces out in the universe, and that you've been blessed. And no matter how dire you thought your own situation was, as you walk away from this phenomenal woman, you've learned a whole host of lessons. One of them being absolute and utter gratitude for the goodness in your own life. And yes, we all have challenges, but there are others out there who are in a much worse situation than we are. So these are the stories we've been bringing to you, and let's see what this special woman in studio with me this morning is bringing to the table. As I've indicated, she's a medical doctor. She practices from Montgomery Park in Johannesburg, and I think we're going to walk away with lots of life lessons after speaking with Dr. Ayesha Jacub. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
It's my pleasure. Each and every one of you women come in here and touch my life in a special way. So let's understand who's Dr. Ayesha Jacub. You are a general practitioner, and currently, which we're going to go into much detail a little later on, something you're very passionate about, something very close to your heart, is a TRE, much needed in this day and age. But who is Dr. Ayesha Jacub?
So interesting, and as I was driving here, I told myself, now you mustn't tell too much. Because
too much is never enough.
I know, that's the problem. Right? So I think alhamdulillah, my life's, I'm 41 now, but my life's gone on a bit of quite a journey, as most of the women that you've spoken to have gone on. And what I think is, you are who you are where you are, because of and in spite of, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So I've spent most of my life in Joburg. I grew up in Lens, studied at Fitz, and after I got married, we moved to Doha. We spent 6 years there, moved to Istanbul. Life had it so that the marriage didn't last, and we had to make our way back to South Africa. But in the interim, I was at one point, I was in Istanbul, and as I told my friends during COVID, I was a watercolor artist painting in the cafes of Istanbul, you know.
What a journey.
What a journey.
What an experience.
One experience. I had to come back home and hit the ground running. So I have 2 kids, two boys, and I think under pressure, you have to make a plan. right? And you draw on your resources, you draw on what you know, and you have decisions to make, sink or swim, right? And sometimes sinking is not an option, and you just got to get up, and it's never, and I'm sure you've spoken to many of the women here, it's never your own journey, right? Fine, you are in the driving seat, but they're women, strong women. In some cases men, but in my experience it's been strong women propping you up along the way, wanting to see you succeed, and you've got to take a hand when you need to. You've got to go with it. And alhamdulillah, I think it's been a wonderful journey up to the point of coming back home. It's been an interesting journey now, and like you're saying, it's challenging, right? But you step up and the world opens up for you as well.
And I guess in a situation like yours, and as you are well aware, there's a gazillion other women walking the same path that you are. You have to step up, and I think more so in your case because there are two other little lives to consider. How old are they? And
so my boys are 30, just turned 13. We had a birthday yesterday.
Alhamdulillah.
13 and 8. And alhamdulillah, you know, people always, the grass is always, I'm sure this is not what we maybe intended to talk about, but people always want to know, how is it overseas? Oh, Istanbul, oh, Doha. And it's wonderful, right?
And that's where I was going to come to as well.
It's wonderful.
It's wonderful, but there are also challenges there.
100%.
And undoubtedly, we have it pretty comfortable in South Africa because we've got a great support system. So what was the learning for you?
I needed to come back home. And home is, we've got a solid community structure. We know where the gaps are in our community, right? We know it all too well, but we've also got a very solid community structure, as much as, yeah.
So Ayesha, I need to ask you this because I have noticed this trend, maybe not you, maybe depending on how close your family structure is, but what I have noticed is that we've all become very insular. As big as our families are and our extended families, we're not connecting like our moms and our grannies used to. And that was a very, very strong support structure for us, whatever challenges we were going through. And I think that's what you perhaps found in Doha,
100%,
overseas.
100%.
But you come back to a similar situation here.
Well, having said that, and as much as we critique where we're at the moment, it's still more than being by yourself floating around. You know, I see people who plug into other communities, like I think in Australia they have quite a tight-knit like Muslim community, and that's different, right? Versus being on your own somewhere in the world, and when you need help, you need to be around people you can call on, and I think that's what we have here. But maybe I can use this opportunity to jump in terms of the connection. And this is what I think a lot of the work that I'm trying to bring into my own practice and my own work, it's about integrating things, right? So biomedicine on its own stands on its own. Alternate modalities stand on their own, right? But it's about connecting and connection. And when you spoke about our broader community being disconnected from each other, I think it's a reflection of where we are as individuals. Where we are as individuals also reflects a broader ecosystem. And I think our work as we move forward as a community, as a society, is going to be to try to integrate those various elements, right? I mean, we think it's easier to say, you know, toxic this, toxic that out of my life, you know what I mean? But it's harder and deeper work to do reparation and repair. So that's kind of what the philosophy of my practice is based on: integrative work, holistic work.
And I guess you wouldn't have been at this point in your life with the type of work you're promoting in our community had you not gone through your experience in Turkey. And I hope you don't mind, I'm going to be a little personal here. But when your marriage started hitting trouble spots in Turkey, what was uppermost in your mind? And do you truly believe that if you come back home, you can heal quicker? And once you've healed as as a medical doctor, as a general practitioner, all of those wonderful ideas and concepts that you had, that you can bring them together in a very cohesive way and offer support to other women. But I know that's a long-winded question, and the answer will probably be quite lengthy. We're going to have to go for an ad break in a minute or two, but very quickly on your two boys. Are they coping well? You said the one is 13, the one is 8.
Yes. So I think coming home and tapping into community, that's, I think, what's helped us all a lot, you know, safety, emotional safety, physical safety, and I think that's where we can all thrive.
And there's a sense of alienation when you're abroad, different to in South Africa. Still, even though you don't see your loved ones, you still, there's that sense of connectivity.
I would say so. However, I think it's different for everyone. Everyone's story is unique.
Okay, let's go for that first ad break. My guest is the lovely Dr. Ayesha Jacub. She is a general practitioner, and we're going to talk more about her work a little later on, because she talks about integrative medicine, integrative healing. So all of that and much more coming up right after the ad break. Welcome back. My guest is Dr. Ayesha Jacub. She is a medical doctor. We're here to talk about her work as well as her life experiences, which she shared with us a little while ago. Let's focus on her work and the type of difference it can make, not only to her, but to all of us. And I know that's something very close to your heart, integrative medicine. Is it a concept we here in South Africa are ready for, and can you give us more detail around it?
So personally, I'm still exploring the concept of integrative medicine. Many people think integrative medicine is now, you know, herb-based, plant-based, supplement-based, and some people see it as that, right? For me, I look at integrative as you integrating different modalities where you see it would benefit a patient. To be quite honest, having been biomedically trained, you're always looking for evidence base, right? And some of these modalities can't give you that robust evidence base that you can tell your patient conclusively, look, the literature says X, Y, Z. I'm willing to, with my patients, sometimes explore other alternatives that, as long as it's safe, it's not dangerous, and it has a very plausible grounding, right? In one such modality, and it's a bit different for me in the practice. Like sometimes I'm still trying to integrate the two modalities with the trauma release therapy and the purely medical practice. And sometimes I'll see someone in front of me and I'll think, sure, we just need to tremor you out, you know. But I'm still trying to find that you know, the sweet spot. But what I'll still say is sometimes I have my TRE clients and I have my medical patients.
So let me throw some water on that. TRE, as I understand it, it might be different, is someone was telling me you need to go through an exercise, some sort of muscle releasing exercises. Mm-hmm. I was introduced to it 10 years ago whilst I was on Hajj, and
sure.
For me, I didn't
feel it.
I didn't feel it, and I just felt the concept kind of went over my head, so I didn't buy into it.
Got it.
But now you as a medical doctor talking about
sure.
it convinces me that there has to be something in it. Talk to us about TRE.
So personally, I'll tell you, I think you can't also be very clear about something unless you've walked the walk, right? And in our training, so you could go onto YouTube, see a few exercises, tremor on your own, right? But it was like 8 months of training, right? And through this training, you do intense personal tremoring, you do intense work on how to hold a safe space for someone. And just with holding a safe space has become sort of a buzzword, right? Hold safe space, right? But what does it mean to truly hold a safe space? And I think, that's something we can bring into our own lives, like to be able to hear someone's trauma story, experience without judgment, without going into our own trauma.
Oh, that's very difficult.
Yes. So I think that's what part of the training was, to be able to hold your own ground. So you're not sinking into the trauma with someone. And what our supervisor always told us was, what help am I to you if we're going down the hole together? Right.
So let me come in here, because I think we're all in our eagerness to hold people in a safe space. When they share their stories with us, we then jump into and connect their story to ours. And I'd say, oh yes, I know what you're talking about. I went through a similar thing, and do you know what my experience was? So we take away from the person
experience
completely, and in our minds we're thinking, I'm holding her in a space, a safe space, so this is good. And you feel so good about yourself, not really realizing you've actually dropped that person.
Right.
What is the right way, and how do we go about doing this?
So I think it's about just listening, right? And so I'll tell you an interesting thing. And so I think actually that the core of what I'm going to be doing, and what I see myself in, the shape the practice will take, is trauma work. Right. So I'll come back to your question. And so some of the work that I do as well is at a drug and alcohol rehab center. Right. So I'm the admitting doctor. The stuff I do there is very medical. But what I'm exposed to is trauma. And most addiction comes from trauma on some level. Right. So in just holding a space for someone's story, to listen to their story without judgment. Right. So yeah, oh, that's so good, oh, that's so bad, it just is, right? You listen, and you'll be surprised in the healing that happens through someone just being able to express their story in safety, that I'm not causing your anxiety now, I'm not bringing up your, so that's the one thing, just to listen and hear, right, without taking it on as well.
Okay, so let me come in here. Haven't we been socialized in a way that we all almost expect that whoever we're holding in a safe space is expecting us, to respond,
right,
and to share our grief and our story with them?
So that's exactly it. I think it's socializing. We expecting ourselves to fix. We expecting ourselves to be saviors, right? And I think also as medical practitioners, and my colleagues might come down hard on me for this, is we also socialize to fix and to be healers, As the real healing Almighty, will handle that, right? We can facilitate, right? And we can hold space. But the real fixing, I don't know how much of the real fixing we can do, right? And also, isn't it disempowering to the person who comes to you, for you to say, I will fix it for you? Isn't it disempowering? They're an adult in their own right? And by you saying, I hear you, yes, they can find their power to fix the situation for themselves, right? So we are empowering them with just a strong sense of, you can do this, you've got this, I hear you. And so again, I think, and this is what the 8 months of training does for you in terms of trauma, is you learn what trauma is. So trauma is not an event. It's a response. It's something that happens without a compassionate witness, right? So for instance, we both witness a hijacking, okay, or even involved in a hijacking. You could go home and tell your spouse, this is what happened to me. And they would be like, really? Put our hand on your shoulder, and you'd find you tremor it out, or you'd even cry at that point. And that's a release, and you were held, right? Literally, figuratively, whatever it is. I go home, I go to my mom. My mom is in her own little world. She's got too much going on. She just came back from work. She's worrying about, the dinner, It's like, oh, really? I'm so sorry. Oh, sure, we'll get that seen too. It wasn't held. So you had to hold it on your own and didn't feel competent enough to hold it. So that becomes a trauma imprint. Right? So trauma is holding space. And with the TRE, what we do, very interestingly, is it elicits a type of a neurogenic tremor. And the real science behind it, I'm kind of figuring out, we're researching, but it has to do with a vagus nerve theory. And the vagus nerve works on that fight, flight, fright response. And what I find during the sessions is that people would go into almost sometimes an adrenaline rush, during the session. But you're holding space, and their body does the work, and the adrenaline response settles, and that trauma imprint releases, right? Who knows where it's from? Sometimes people can pinpoint it, sometimes they can't. Your body holds more of a memory than you actually do. And the work you see is phenomenal. It's like shedding loads that you don't even know were there.
It's about cell memory, is it not?
I believe in that.
And what about someone like myself? That one experience that I had almost 10 years ago when this lady took us through this tremoring exercise. It wasn't a pleasant experience for me.
So this is it.
Okay, it wasn't pleasant because I think I had very negative self-talk about it. I know she's a personal friend. So because I know her so personally, I don't always buy into the kind of stuff she's trying to put across.
Sure.
And maybe that was the reason why I was negative.
It's possible. So you need to feel safe, right?
Okay.
So it's about the practitioner. And that's why someone could say, could I do it by myself? Yes, in time. You must do it by yourself in time, when you feel safe enough to hold a space for yourself, right? But it's about creating a safe environment for someone. And I hope that even as practitioners, you just create that safe environment where someone can come in and feel like I'm being held, even with my physical ailments.
Once again, time for an ad break in a minute or so. Is this being widely practiced in South Africa and amongst our community? A quick, short answer.
I would say increasingly, yes. There are a few practitioners, but I think as people see the benefit that it brings, I think it's going to become a widespread practice. It's been in South Africa for a while. The forefather of TRE, David Baselli, came and did some intense training in South Africa years ago, like 20 years ago. But I think the need of our society at the moment, I think post-COVID, post whatever we're going through as a disjointed society, the need is increasing.
Okay. I'm talking to Dr. Ayesha Jacub. She is a general practitioner, and she's talking about a very fascinating science, and that is TRE. We're going to go into it in much more detail in a minute or two. And do remember, she too is a nominee of the Women of Purpose Awards. Stay with us. Another amazing woman in studio with me today. I'm so blessed. I walk away from my interviews having learned something valuable every time I interact with phenomenal women. She, of course, in this instance, is Dr. Ayesha Jacub. You mentioned something about working at a substance abuse center. You also mentioned that people who resort to substance abuse have come from a background of severe trauma. Yet, on the other hand, we're hearing it's about the choices that they make. So how do you balance the two? Do I support someone whom I know is going through a very difficult journey regarding substance abuse, and his or her personality has changed completely, and they become a hateful person? Or do I empathize and say, he or she has had a lot of trauma in their lives? And do I try and go to that place of trauma and try and help them unpack the trauma? You're the medical expert. What's your thoughts on it? Because I think this is an ongoing debate, is it not?
So that's it, and I think you've laid it all out very clearly. It's an interplay between background and choices, right? Out of 5 young men that decide to smoke weed, 1 is going to be the addict. Who's the addict? Someone with something else going on, right? But it's interesting what you said. Should I go to that place of trauma with them? Why are you fixing them, right? Do you see our instinct and our inclination is to rush and fix, right?
And you may not agree with me,
Yeah.
but let's hear your thoughts as
Sure.
a medical doctor. The person might be a partner or a child
Got
or a
it.
brother, a
Got
sibling.
it. Got it.
And the one person is the substance abuser, but it impacts on 16 other lives or more.
So we've seen that, right? And it's an ecosystem, right? And I think, sure, and this is where I think, like, you know, patients who come for the TRE often say, oh, I've been for talk therapy, I'm all talked out, you know. And there's a place for talk therapy, and I think like Western psychology is good in terms of framing those relationships and the boundaries, right? So often we're finding in the substance abuse space, it's this enmeshed families, a little bit of boundary issues, you know. And as each component in that ecosystem gets healthier, the addict has to find their space of healing, right? So it's a communal healing, right? And healing doesn't mean I will only heal once you fixed. I will heal in my own context, and that's going to establish more secure boundaries for the addict to then know how to fix themselves, you know, until the other parts of the ecosystem are still, so we talk about codependence, and, you know, I'm learning that too, you know, that the firm, healthy boundaries creates a healthier space for the addict to sort themselves out, right? And you're holding opportunities, like you see the addict there, you're holding out options, and they've got choices, right? They've still got choices. So respect that they are the adult that can take ownership of the addiction and step into a healing space.
And if the support structure around them takes responsibility for their lives and the disruption that the addict has caused in their lives, if they take responsibility and start healing, I think the change will be noted by the abuser, and he then either has to make the choice that I come on board or not.
That's it.
Where and how does TRE heal or play a healing role in someone that is rehabilitating?
Okay, so it's very interesting, and I work with a lovely, excellent team. I don't know if I can mention the name.
Of course, go ahead.
So it's the Changes Rehabilitation Center. And I haven't worked at other centers, so I don't know. But what I do know is that they work with dual diagnosis, so it's psychiatry, psychology. And what I like is that, so I would speak to Cheryl. She's
Cheryl Rami.
Exactly.
She's been on the show as well.
There we go. So I tell Cheryl, Cheryl, sure, I just wish I could do TRE with these guys all night. And she's like, they're not ready yet. You know, healing is a process, right? And addiction, substance abuse is very physical, at least in the beginning, right? And she says the psyches are not ready yet. Let that settle a little bit, you know, and then maybe secondary and tertiary. And in time, I hope we can do more in the secondary facility and tertiary facility, but you must also know TRE takes time, right? So it's like a 40 to 50 minute session at a time. I would say that for the other members in the ecosystem, TRE is great in terms of, so most of the women that do the TRE training, there are some special men who do TRE training, but for the most part it's women. And it's women who have been codependents, who have been through their own journey, and you find the healing through the TRE because it's almost like you're stepping into yourself and your sense of self and your sense of identity. But remember, we've now been tremoring sometimes 15 times a week.
Just remind me that when you're doing the tremor exercises or tremoring as you refer to it, is there any talking, because I can't remember, is there any talking going on?
So initially it's just we're guiding you through the stretch exercises. So the philosophy is it's based on trauma being held in the psoas muscle, all through the body, but we activate the psoas muscle, which is kind of, when they say your core, it's around that area. And so what we activate, and you'll find a gentle tremor starting and moves through the body. And that's why your practitioner comes in, because the practitioner is going to help you interpret, not making a story of it, but holding that, guiding you, helping you to settle, or to teach you to settle yourself, right? And interestingly, the tremor spreads through the body in time, right? And us as practitioners and trainees, we found that eventually it moves up to your neck, almost going through your body, finding those tight areas, right? We could look at it very physiologically, so people with chronic muscle pain, chronic illnesses, they eventually find relief, or you could look at it emotionally. Some people have emotional releases, some people, so this is what the tremor is doing. I forgot what the initial question.
Okay, let's just move.
Yeah.
I wanted to know about how it helps substance abusers.
Yes.
Because with them, it's really in the mind, is it not?
To a large extent.
And yeah, tremoring is more about the body.
So this is the interesting part.
Okay.
And as medical practitioners, we were taught mind, body, right? And if we say, oh no, but they're interlinked, But when it comes to the mind, you see the psychiatrist, you see the counselor. I'm dealing with the physical body. Right, and I'm going to touch on territory which my colleagues might frown on, but we know you stressed out, you get IBS, right? Fibromyalgia, right? Autoimmune illnesses from severe stress. So there's a connection there, and what we found is through working with the body, you regulate the nervous system. So a lot of people that do TRE find I'm less reactive, So I'm more in myself, in the moment, grounded. So this is the interesting interplay between body work and mind-body work and real mind-body work.
What about, so that's the issue around substance abusers. What about people who have cancers and other life-threatening diseases?
So with cancer and when you're in a desperate situation, your back is really against the wall, right? So people are willing to try anything, and a lot of the time that's where people go on to alternate practitioners, right? And sometimes I've seen how this can be exploited, right? Like, I'll give you this and this and this treatment. It's super expensive. No, but it's my life. I'll be willing to pay. With cancers, it's your journey. Right? And I do believe as Muslims, we believe that nothing happens incidentally, right? So we make meaning of things because it's part of a bigger plan, right? It's not just to make things easier. We truly believe there's a lesson here, right? I won't say TRE can cure cancer. No, I won't say that, right? But TRE is going to help you through whichever journey you need to go through.
So let's look at a typical cancer patient. They normally don't have, after the chemo and radium, there's no energy.
100%.
Possibly no will to live, etc. Would they have the physical energy to go through tremoring? And if not, is there an alternative in the tremor
modalities? So very interesting. Just this weekend, I did a myofascial release course, and I don't know where that will fit into my general practice. I'm still experimenting with it a little bit. But it's working with the fascial system in terms of recalibrating, the fascia is all around our body. As medical practitioners, we would just chuck it out in the dissection, yet it's such a big part of what holds us together. Something a little more gentle, like myofascial release.
So you'd work with the
So that's craniosacral largely, but the fascia is part of that whole craniosacral system, right? I'm not going to touch too much on this because it's kind of a new avenue I'm leaning into. But tremoring doesn't have to be dramatic tremoring. So if you go onto YouTube, you're going to find crazy tremoring, right? It can be very gentle, and your practitioner is going to guide you through what you need to go through. I think it's just a good modality for anyone, kids,
Why for kids? In what respect? You're talking hyperactive kids?
So I had a client come in recently. ADHD there is a real ADHD, but oftentimes what looks like ADHD is a trauma response.
Okay.
Right. So you're zoning out, you're dissociating. Right, and it's kids who come from trauma, and sometimes it's a good home. Maybe there was a death in the family that wasn't processed, so they are shutting off. So it's about just reconnecting to yourself, reconnecting to others. I think if that's the theme, it's reconnection.
Okay, we're going to delve into this a little deeper just after the ad break. I want to look at issues around, a whole host of issues. So let's not say anything right now. My guest is Dr. Ayesha Jacub. We're talking tremoring. She is a Woman of Purpose nominee. She's a medical doctor and, of course, another modality that she's adding to the services that she provides. We're talking trauma release, and we're also talking medical practitioners. She's a medical practitioner, my guest, Dr. Ayesha Jacub, and how she is kind of collaborating with these different modalities to give a very holistic service to her patients. A very important question is 16 days of no violence against women and children, and I think half or most of South Africa, we as a people are very traumatized. It could be our, the years of apartheid.
Oh, yeah.
And still ongoing without a doubt. But the moment people talk about he or she suffered trauma in her childhood, why do I automatically assume that it must have been sexual abuse?
I think because those are the big ones, right? And for me, those are the toughest ones. I think because it shapes so much going forward, right? And like also coming to the end point, which is like the rehab, so many of the people landing up there have been sexually abused, right? And I mean, this is something on its own completely, right? But so those are the big ones. But it doesn't necessarily have to be sexual abuse, doesn't have to be physical abuse. I think it can also be neglect. And not necessarily, you come home to an empty home kind of neglect. It can be emotional neglect.
But that's also a big one, isn't it? Coming home to an empty house.
Sure.
And maybe a helper will just slap a meal in front of you and you're in an area or an environment of two very absent parents.
So this is the absent parenting. And sometimes your parents are present but absent. Right? So remember my example of the mom who's just going through so much of her own stuff that she can't hold your I mean, it could have been something very silly, like, well, not silly, because young girls these days are facing a lot of like, a bullying or over social media, and maybe sometimes you just want to debrief, but yet your caregiver, your primary caregiver, doesn't have the capacity to hold that for you. So what happens then? You internalize it, you make meanings of it, and it doesn't get to have the expression it needs, right? And I think these are the communities and the homes and societies that we are currently living in and living through. It's that we all just dealing with so much of our own noise, right, that we're unable to fully be present even in a one-on-one conversation, right? You want to tell me what happened to you, right? But I need someone to listen to me, right?
What about assumptions?
In terms of?
So you're interacting, family, friends, your support group, your partner, and so much gets lost in the conversation and you're not heard. That's a huge part of it as well.
I think it's that of just feeling heard, feeling like you're expressing what you need to express, or you're authentic. It's now become buzzwords because psychology has been like popularized, right? But if you come back to these the real meaning of these words, what does it mean to be heard? And my son told me something very interesting. So I think the younger one got hurt. And he's like, he's hurt. And as a doctor, unless it's like gushing, especially someone trained at Para, unless it's dramatic, it's like it's going to be okay. And I got 10 other things happening. I'm like, hey, he's okay, he's okay. Says like, he's not asking you to fix it. Sometimes if you just sit down and listen to him, that will be okay. And I'm like, oh, this was deep, But that's a crux of the matter, right? Just not going through things or through life on your own emotionally. Right? I think that's the take-home message, like it was for me, and I think that's what it can be for us as a society. Presence, connectedness, and not in a superficial way. And so my intention, and I'm saying this, but I'm by no means there. It's my intention and goal. Is it doesn't take, and when I keep on going back to the rehab and I ask myself, why do I enjoy this work so much? And I think it's just also a reminder of what it truly takes to parent, right? I'm not there, not by a long shot, but it just requires presence and connectedness, right? So my intention is, and I mean, so I think one of my family members, extended family member, nominated me for this award because they were saying, oh, Ayesha's doing this, and Ayesha's at the Palestine rally and with the students, and this. And we glorified busyness in our lives and in our community, busyness and achievement, right?
It kind of strokes our own egos, does it not?
It does.
Because we show the world that we're important.
Yes.
Look at me, I'm so busy, I'm involved in this, that and the other, and it's adding, perhaps to you personally, adding meaning to your life.
It is.
But do you have to actually...
So it's valuable, right? Because
Right.
also sometimes someone needs to do it, right? So someone needs to be interviewing, someone needs to do the community work, right? And those things are really important, right? And that's where we as individuals need to check our intentions and whatever it is. But I think at the end of the day, I'd like to clear up my space enough to be a present parent. Because I think the value that you can add there reverberates.
Absolutely.
You know?
So you don't have a lost generation. Because if all of us are caught up in wanting to be recognized, wanting to be famous, wanting to be affirmed, wanting to be a social blogger with a gazillion followers, etc., etc., how much of value are we giving to the most important people in our own lives?
Well, but that's true. But also it doesn't have to be an either or, right? So I'll tell you, and I'll take the opportunity, since we are celebrating Other Women. We recently had an event for a friend of mine, and it will be publicized soon. So she is a Muslim lady. You'll see she's just our auntie. We see her on the streets. But she's recently been appointed as CFO of Deloitte Africa, a good friend of mine. Her name is Fatima Abba. We should have her sometime.
Inshallah. Inshallah. Thank you.
So Fatima's managed to also just first things first. You prioritize the priorities, right? And kids are growing up wonderfully. How she does it, I don't know. But you prioritize the importance and the rest will follow. Just don't drop the ball on the important stuff, you know. And it's
Having said all of that, as a medical practitioner and this love of yours regarding, when you talk TRE, it's really about mental healing. It's in a space of mental health.
yes.
Why are we seeing so much of mental health issues? And when you talk about addiction, that too is a mental health disease. Why are we seeing so much of that? More so than in our parents' and grandparents' times, or was it just not publicized?
So this is some. I think it's both, right? I think they didn't know what it was. I mean, you'd have, oh no, Dada has a bad temper. We didn't know Dada's suffering from bipolar, right? You know, so it could be that, right? But also in the 12-step program, one of the mantras is the opposite of addiction is connection, right? So if we're talking about a disconnected society, what is the opposite of that? Connection. Okay. So you're trying to fill a space of connection, a void that can't be filled through addiction. And we're going to a substance facility for addiction, but we're addicted to our jobs. We're addicted to entertainment. Right.
I'm addicted to sugar.
Addicted to sugar, whatever it is. So the opposite of addiction is connection and true connection. I think that's what we're all yearning and craving. We're wanting it from each other, but we don't know how to be present enough in ourselves to be able to provide it for the next person.
Dr. Ayesha Jacub, I think you're an absolutely phenomenal woman. I like what you're sharing with me today. You're talking about integrative healing, and I think that's what our community and the world at large needs. I don't want to go to a medical doctor and I'm just being prescribed pills, and more pills, but you are then going to give me an alternative, because we know with every pill that I pop, there's a side effect as well. It may help my headache, but it's going to give me a side effect. So I like what you're doing. Are we going to be seeing lots more of this? Do you think it's going to catch on with other medical practitioners?
I think, and my colleagues might disagree, is that if we don't open ourselves up to it, we're going to find that more people will veer towards the alternate space, which is not a bad thing, but also it's not a very regulated space, which is also not an entirely bad thing. But I mean, it's a free-for-all, it's an open marketplace, and our patients are going to be, you know, weaving in and out. I think if we don't practice it ourselves, that's fine, but it's important to know what's out there so that you can direct our patients accordingly. And if we're not going to direct them, they're going to find it, you know. So we need to open ourselves up to alternate spaces.
Very quickly, your thoughts on people who overdo it on the the supplements. Is it a good thing? Do you believe that we can get it in our foods, or our food sources also compromised?
So, a bit of everything, right? Ideally, we'd want the best nutrition. We're not getting it. I do believe certain amount of supplementation is needed, but I also believe that the supplement industry is now becoming also an extractive industry. So there's got to be a balance, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What does being nominated as Women of Power mean for you? Does it change anything in your life?
Not particularly, but it's encouraging. It's very encouraging to know that somebody thinks of you in that light. But also, it's an opportunity to introspect, like we've done now. So I appreciate that moment to take time out to say where I've been and where I need to go, and to meet other women.
It's been absolutely wonderful talking with you. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala light your way every step of the way. I'm so pleased to have had you in my company today.
Ameen.
Go well, keep us in your du'as, and salamu alaikum to you. And that's the end of the show today. Perspective with Dr. Ayesha Jacub. She talks about TRE. She's very passionate about it. She is a medical doctor and she is based in Johannesburg. Thank you for watching. Till the next time, as always, Khuda Hafiz.